Hi, I'm Amadou Diallo. This edition of Digital Photo 360 is all about gear. Everything you need to make great images. We're at the PhotoPlus International Conference and Expo for a look at the latest in digital equipment. We'll catch up with folks from Adobe, Canon, HP, and Ilford and get a sneak peek at some of their most exciting new products. In our Gear Up segment, I'll tell you what you need to look for when you're shopping for that new camera or printer, and as always, I'll leave you with a quick tip you can use to make better images right away. That's all coming up on Digital Photo 360, the show that revolves around you making better images. Each year, the photo industry gathers in New York City for the PhotoPlus International Conference and Expo. 3 days full of product launches, demos, seminars, and industry networking. Companies both large and small show off their latest gear to the press, industry tastemakers, and of course, gear-savvy consumers. If it's about photography, you'll find it here. Best of all, an event like this offers the chance to meet face-to-face with the people responsible for some of the most exciting new products in digital photography. Now, let's go catch up with some of our friends. I'm here with the public face of the most widely used image editing application in the world. The software is Adobe Photoshop, and the man is John Nack. Now, I've got to ask you, being responsible for the team that puts out the upgrades and the updates to Photoshop, what's the process like in terms of deciding in a new version what new features get added, what new features you wanted to put in that didn't get in?
The fun thing, but also the big challenge with Photoshop is that, as I was saying, so many people use it in so many different ways. You know, you've got radiologists and web designers and photographers. And so we try to really pick the most broadly useful features each release. And then if we can't build something, what we're trying to do more and more is make the app very flexible, and so that a third party can very easily come in and add on to it, customize it, so that it doesn't have to just be one size fits all.
John, I remember back when Photoshop referred to just a single piece of software, but that's no longer the case. Can you walk us through a little bit about the whole family of Photoshop projects and who they're geared towards?
What started as just a relatively simple tool for just editing photos back in 1990 pretty rapidly grew into something for compositing, and then scientists started using it. The CIA was using it even back then. And so as it's evolved, there have been opportunities to take that core technology and then kind of spin it in new ways. There's a consumer version, Photoshop Elements. It's a lot like Photoshop, but it adds some scrapbooking, sharing tools. There's Photoshop Lightroom, which came out just about earlier this year, actually, for the first public version. It's really a digital workflow tool, so it works well with Photoshop itself. Now there's a tool called Photoshop Express, which has been evolved or announced. And so that's a Flash-based tool that'll actually run on the web and let people casually sort of do digital image manipulation right through the web browser.
Lightroom is different because it was developed specifically for photographers.
That's right.
And what's the reaction been like that? What's the feedback you're getting from photographers? Is it actually replacing Photoshop in people's workflows?
The response has been overwhelmingly positive. I forget, we did a public beta, and I think we had something like 150,000 downloads, wow. Just tremendous response from the photography community. And one of the really cool parts was that instead of us shipping it and then saying, well, I hope you like it and now we'll change it, we really went out there and said, hey, before we charge any money for this thing, let's get a lot of feedback from pros in the field. And so I think a lot of people felt really involved. And so they don't view it as a replacement for Photoshop, it's really a complement. And so whereas Photoshop is very, very deep and comparatively narrow, Lightroom is less deep but very, very broad. And so you can kind of use the two together. So do your whole shoot, triage it, rate it, get the ones you want, and then if you need to bounce to Photoshop for really deep editing, it's one click away.
Adobe's been a big proponent of pushing DNG, or the digital negative file format. Why is that important, and how can that help photographers?
One of the interesting things in the last about 5 years now has been just the explosion of RAW and as a technology. And it's a really brilliant way to capture all the data from your camera sensor. The only problem, though, is that there are literally now hundreds of RAW formats. So really the idea with DNG was to say, instead of having hundreds of individual formats, can we come up with a standard and kind of drive that forward? And so as with anything with a lot of big companies, it takes a while, but I think adoption by consumers has been great and by pros.
Photoshop and Lightroom, there's so many things that they can do. I mean, it seems like there's almost nothing left. Looking ahead, Where do you see the advances in the technology for these products? Is it more for ease of use, making tools more discoverable, or is there some unknown feature set beyond the horizon that is going to change photography forever?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right.
So
you heard it here first.
Yeah, it's funny. I started on Photoshop about 5.5 years ago, and initially I thought, well, it's an honor. It's such a neat product. Everybody loves it, but it's kind of old, and there's probably not that much left to do. God, 5 years later, after all we've done, I'm like, oh, there's so much we have yet to do. The two things I think are the most critical for the, however long this keeps going, are performance and complexity. Everybody wants it to go as fast as possible, so we're investing a lot under the hood to really modernize it, take advantage of hardware. But then also, if you've seen on the web just in the last few weeks, there's some crazy image scientists doing this stuff with dynamically resizing a photo and intelligently only carving out the parts that your eye wouldn't miss. And some of those guys now have been hired by Adobe. I've gotten a peek at some of what they're working on, and it's just, I don't know. It's like, sometimes you're like, well, is that going to be useful? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I can't believe we didn't have that before.
Wow.
So it's all of the above. It's the very, very little stuff, just little tweaks to the workflow, and then it's this crazy big stuff that takes 10 years to research and code, and just trying to mix those is a lot of fun.